Joining us today are John McCarthy, Vice President, Principal Analyst serving CIOs from Forrester Research, and Zachary Slayton, Senior Director of Software Solutions from Collaborative Consulting. With 30 years of experience at Forrester, John is a key contributor to the work on predicting business impact of technology. He covers such topics as the future of IT services and firms' digital transformation, the development of Internet of Things software platforms, and the implications of a world where software is the brand. Zach has over 20 years of practical, hand-on experience. He has a track record of delivering complex, integrated technology solutions to meet business needs. Zachary has experience in playing technology leadership roles ranging from enterprise architect at a large multi-billion-dollar companies to hands-on application architect at startup-sized firms. John, I'll turn it over to you.
Great. Thanks very much, Melanie. And it's a pleasure to kick off the event today under the title that I am going to be talking about, which is, let me just get set up here. Here we go. Meeting customers' rising expectations requires new digital platforms. I'm going to link the business challenge to the technology architecture to meet that challenge. The goal of kicking off this session is kind of share with you what we're seeing across a broad range of research to validate what you're doing in your own organizations, but maybe challenge your thinking in other areas. And to do that, the things that I'm going to focus on is this theme is, and the challenge that companies face is that customers are changing their behavior faster than firms can evolve their business model, processes, and technologies. And that this is really at the core of this requirement that to accelerate time to value with your digital platform transformation, you need to keep up with these rising customer expectations. This next slide, I think, really makes it clear and embodies the shift that's going on in organization. It showcases the challenges that companies face. Business leaders say, 84% of them say that addressing these rising customer expectations are a top business priority. It's right up there with growing the business. Secondly, 61% want to improve IT systems to better serve their customers. That's the whole point of the webinar today, right? That they're having to transform their digital platforms. They're having to build a whole new class of systems to better serve customers. And part of that design point is making their products and services easier to use. And that requires them to also streamline their business processes to support customer engagement. And also to think about doing things with their external partners much more than they have in the past. They need to integrate with other products and services to make and deliver, to meet these rising customer expectations and deliver new sources of customer value moving forward. And to start around this theme, I want to share with you one great example. This is DBS Bank, a large bank in Southeast Asia out of Singapore, where they're using customer journey mapping to guide their transformation. They're making that philosophical and process mindset shift to put the customer at the center of what they do. And the vision here is they wanted to reinvent the banking experience to become kind of the Asian service bank of choice, right? You think about in the airline industry, right, the great level of service that we associate with Asian carriers like Singapore Airlines. They wanted to apply that to banking. And the solution was multifaceted. First, they developed a customer experience strategy that aligned their corporate vision and guided the redesign of the teams, the processes, products, and the digital touch points. Customer journey mapping became part of that process shift, and it became the way they prioritized their investment in business changes, but also technology project. And it was the catalyst for a $300 million legacy rewrite of their core banking system, creating that new digital platform to serve their customers. And as part of that, they were switching suppliers because time to market and nimbleness were a key requirement. The business benefit, these cross-functional improvements saved 239 million hours of customers' time. And this drove a fundamental increase in their net promoter scores. Now what I'd like to do is focus on this platform shift more specifically. And what's happening is to be a successful digital business, it requires a shift in spending and the focus of integration. In the old world, we focused on what we call at Forrester the systems of record that hosted the business processes, the SAP ERP, the old claims processing, core banking system, order entry system. But what's happening now, to meet these rising customer expectations, we're seeing a fundamental shift in investment in integration. Yes, those systems of record are still there, but they're a shrinking portion of our focus and our spending. And what we're having to do is build new systems of engagement and new digital experience platforms that touch their customers and humans directly, particularly through their tablet, phone, and new wearable devices. At the same time, in the B2B space, we're building a whole new set of systems of automation and IoT platforms that connect together the physical world. And at the core of this new environment, the integration focus is around building these systems of insight. How do I turn the data from the traditional systems and these new customer-facing systems and these new connected product systems to turn that data into real insight that will ultimately power our digital business moving forward? And what I'm going to do today, before I turn it over to Zach, is talk about one specific class of these new systems, what we call systems of engagement and digital experience platforms. And the challenge for organization going forward is there are 4 gaps between what customers expect and what companies deliver. The first of those gaps is at the performance level, right? Customers in this age expect near-time response time in terms of their service requests or their desire to change a flight or look up what's going on in their account. What companies deliver is something often less than that. It doesn't perform up to speed. There's the convenience gap, right? Customers expect task-specific services tailored to their needs and experiences consistent across the different channels. What they get is, the full-featured website squeezed down so it marginally fits in their phone, or they have very different experiences depending on the different product lines and the different channels. The next gap is at the personalization level. People expect contextualized, right, based on where I am, information tailored to what they're trying to do. What they get is a generic one-size-fits-all model. And lastly, we come on the trust gap, right? They expect accurate, reliable, transparent service, privacy-respecting preference choices, and what they get is variable accuracy and reliability, very channel or specific, function-specific privacy and preference policies. And what's required to close those gaps is very different, right? At the performance level, it's internet scale, real-time support, any device, instrumented for continuous data-driven improvement. At the convenience level, it's simple, compelling, complete, unified delivery across all channels, act anywhere immediately. Personalization, it's context-rich. It helps me take the next most likely action. A great example of this is the Delta mobile app. It doesn't just tell you that your flight's delayed. Here are the 3 options that are available to you in terms of rescheduling your flight. They're location aware. They know where you are. They're leveraging social data. They're very understanding of what we saw at DBS Bank, which is the understanding of the customer journey mapping. And then lastly, from a trust point of view, honest, accountable, transparent, reliable. And what's happening is that to close these gaps and to build out these capabilities requires a new architecture, a new platform for cross-channel delivery. And the elements or the dynamics or the defining elements, I should say, of that cross-channel delivery architecture are, it's built on a composable 4-tier experience architecture, and I'll drill into this in more detail in just a second, right? But it's a combination of different systems, right? It's a much more modular design so that we quickly can update it based on changes in our partners, changes in customer preferences. It's assembled from a portfolio of new and existing capabilities, right? It's leveraging some of the investments we've made in our traditional website, but there are new capabilities on there. For example, the ability to send out notifications much more proactively than in making people come to the site. Excuse me. Critical here is it's scaled through cloud and cloud-connected services. right? The scalability, the volatility in this customer-centric environment is very different than the old bounded walls of employees inside the organization. And lastly, it leverages APIs to open up internal systems, with business partners moving forward. The core elements of these 4 tiers are obviously the digital touch points, not just the tablets and the phones, but increasingly wearables, but also more smart connected products play into this. And we need to separate out what's going on with the interfaces there and the APIs there with the contextual delivery, right? How do we leverage analytics to anticipate your next most likely action? How do we tailor that delivery based on the context of the device, but also the network that you're on? And this requires a level of aggregation and orchestration, right? So that developers who are building these front-end applications can quickly pull together different services, discover those services, discover the APIs to leverage them. And then what we're aggregating and orchestrating is data, internal services, but increasingly external services, whether it's cloud-delivered services or integration that we're doing with our business partners to create a better overall experience. A great example of this in action is the work that was going on to build this new generation platform over the last 3 years to deal with this mobile digital shift in media at the Washington Post. You know, the challenge, like many media companies, is declining readership. They had a paper-first mindset and architecture, and the question is, how do they address this rising volume of mobile traffic and these rising expectations in this new digital world from customers? The solution here was they spent 3 years building a whole new digital platform that was composed on 4 key elements: the workflow of getting the content prepared and out for the different devices, aggregation of content, some of it now increasingly coming from third parties. How do we render that on the different devices, and how do we assure great delivery? They put together a team of engineers and designers, not traditional IT developers, to do this, that sat directly in the newsroom. And that creating this separate software engineering team to build this platform, separate from the traditional developers, was a required mindset shift. The result is they've seen a 60% increase in traffic over the last year due to the fact that they're able to aggregate more content from third parties, but also they're able to deliver a great delivery experience in terms of its customization or personalization, its convenience, and also its performance. And what's happening here is that this support for digital showcases or changes a fundamental shift in technology spending. In the mobile world, most of the money was still being allocated to building and managing these traditional systems of record. And what's happening in this mobile IoT digital world is that we're rationalizing and dramatically simplifying down the complexity in these back-end systems so that we can free up the money to build these new digital experience platforms. And what's happening as part of this funding shift is that digital enterprises have to change the way they operate. They need to look much more like a cloud-based ISV. In this world where these new platforms and software is the brand, firms have to be able to deliver 5 nines availability and reliability, right? That key gap that we talked about initially was the performance gap. A big part of that is reliability. The other thing is to keep up with these rising customer expectations, we need to deliver, anywhere from 5 to 50 releases a year. This is not your father's IT of, 3 releases a decade. And there's a level of ease of use where the constituents, whether it's a customer, end consumer, business partner, or employee, or executive, need to be able to figure out how to use this app in a matter of minutes. And what comes out of this are 6 kind of tenets of this cloud-based shift. The first is user experience becomes an absolute requirement, not a nice to have. We're not throwing it over the wall to the designers in the last week, right? They're integrated with the development team like we saw at the Washington Post. Right? The tsunami of releases requires very different agile-based processes and an agile-based mindset and a very different, much more modular application architecture, as we just talked about. We've got to open up the APIs to leverage the cloud, but also to build that ecosystem of business partners who can help us innovate more quickly and extend our development and investment dollars. We need to refactor these back-end architectures and applications. In many cases, this means massive euthanasia. As you'll see in just a minute, companies are making massive reductions in the complexity in that back end to free up money and to give them the agility to build these new differentiating digital platforms. They're deploying these new experience architecture and IoT platform to close these customer expectation gaps that I just talked about. And then lastly, what's interesting, in many organizations, like we saw at Washington Post and like you'll see in just a minute at GE, they're creating a separate software engineering group to kind of change that operational mindset to embody the elements that are in the center of this chart. And one last example that I want to share with you before I summarize and turn it over to Zach is what GE is doing to build their software ecosystem, but also how they're moving to the cloud for a much different level of agility. The vision here is that they can improve their customers' efficiency through software and analytics that differentiates their products that are delivered as a service. To do this, though, the solution was very multifaceted. First, they created a separate GE software group out in the valley with 2,000 people that's building the software platforms, these new digital platforms that we're talking about, to open up and build an ecosystem for innovation around their IoT-based products and services. They're using the public cloud to dramatically simplify IT, speed up innovation, allow the business to provision things themselves in a self-service environment. They're building software partnerships with companies like Pivotal and Amazon to help themselves and their clients analyze all of the data that's coming from these new generation of IoT systems in these smart connected products. As a result of this moving to the cloud, they're shutting down 30 out of 34 of their data centers. They're decommissioning 4,500 of the 9,000 apps, and they're moving the remaining 90% to a public cloud environment, right? They're simplifying their traditional environment so they can invest in building this ecosystem of 42 IoT applications that's critical to how they differentiate their products and deliver service to their customers moving forward. So to summarize, the challenge is that customers are changing their behavior faster than firms can evolve their business model, processes, and technology. That software, customer experience, driven by analytics, drive the customer brand experience and how you differentiate your products and services. And that firms need to invest in a whole new generation of digital platforms to meet these rising customer expectations. And that digital enterprise have to operate like a cloud-based software firm, not your father's IT moving forward. This is some of the research that I built this presentation off of if you want to drill down on some of these concepts in more detail. And if you have any follow-up questions that we don't answer today at the webinar, I'll be happy to take emails from you. You can follow me on LinkedIn. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Zach, who is going to share with what's going on from a collaborative consulting perspective. Zach, over to you.
Excellent, thank you. Just do the transition here. Great. So my name is Zach Slayton, and I'm Senior Director of Software Solutions for Collaborative Consulting. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about our point of view on digital platform transformation and really how to accelerate this process. And then we'll also talk through a case study with one of our client partners, General Bone and Joint Surgery. Great. So software solutions from a collaborative perspective really revolves around developing mission-critical digital solutions for help our clients differentiate their businesses. To John's points earlier, our focus is really less on those systems of record and more on those systems of engagement and how we enable business transformation. So our services that we provide around creative and technology strategy really focus on helping take an idea and turn it into an actionable roadmap. It's one of the things you'll hear a lot from collaborative if you talk to us is you'll hear a lot of pragmatic and actionable. That's really what we base a lot of our services on. So from a digital product development perspective, it really involves around taking the roadmap and then turning it into a product for launch. And so from that perspective, we go end to end. The technology integration is part of every aspect of these digital platforms and a critical piece of any digital initiative. And then system validation tuning making sure it performs, making sure it responds, making sure it's high quality for that user experience, plus the ongoing support and enhancement at a rapid pace, to John's point. So what's really driving this change? Again, to summarize, a number of business drivers and technology drivers coming together to really push the pace of change beyond the traditional models. And the digital innovation platform really serves to provide the ability to support continuous innovation and rapid time to market. Those are the two key tenets. And that allows the business to really perform innovation and the technology to not be a constraint, but to really be an enabler for that process. So what exactly is a digital innovation platform? Well, first of all, it's an enabler of change. So it's critical that the technology be part of the solution, provide the capabilities really to allow the business to be creative and to come up with new ideas, and then to be able to service those ideas quickly so that before the market shifts. Now, more and more technology provides the business interface to the world, as these systems of engagement are truly the front lines on how products go to market. A digital innovation platform has to be able to support that work. And then from a technical perspective, being able to provide a layered service-oriented architecture, abstracting the core business value from the devices and integrations. So devices are going to come up. IoT is pushing major advancement in that area. You know, mobile has pushed in the past and will continue to push. And then you still have traditional web. Architectures that are focused on any one of those are not going to be successful in this environment, where as an architecture that expects those to appear, those new things to appear, expects new integrations with back-end systems and other external partners, those are the architectures that are going to be successful. In the end, innovation then becomes a matter of leveraging the platform services, extending it where necessary to support innovation and new ideas, and then integrating with other services and sources to extend that investment dollar. Platform itself becomes the key to efficient, effective innovation. So what are some of the characteristics of a digital innovation platform? Well, if you look at a typical application diagram here, kind of shadowed out, one of the key things is that within the core of the system is just about the only thing you control. So you have some influence over the way the core of the system works, and that gives you an opportunity to optimize for performance, for scalability, for rapid extension and expansion of services. But it's critical to take that core piece and really make sure that it's optimized for the task. Why is that? Because you're going to expect multiple technologies to appear over the roadmap, right? As the system grows and expands and new ideas come up, they're going to involve, whether it be Internet of Things or mobile or traditional websites, they're going to involve a multitude of new technologies that have to be involved, have to be part of the system. So the way you balance that is you're open around the boundaries. So while you've optimized the core, in order to take advantage of these new technologies, you have to be able to make those boundaries permeable and able to absorb the different technology needs. And that's done with consistent APIs, defended boundaries, discipline, and good practices. Specifically, it's the architecture. At the end of the day, laying out the architecture at the foundation, making sure that it meets these criteria, and many more, I'm summarizing obviously, is the key to setting up an effective and efficient digital innovation platform. So how do we get there? Well, as I emphasized in the last slide, start with a proven architecture, right? Layers and service orientation are typical characteristics. We see that a lot, but there's more to it than that. The devil is always in the details. Focus on the known unknowns. In other words, we know certain things about our system. There are many places in the system, especially outside of that core, where we don't know what's coming. So focus on the architectural boundaries and how we handle those so that we can make sure that when new things come up, we can take advantage of them. So discipline. There's always a tendency to shortcut or take a shorter route to get to a deliverable. But when you're building a core platform like this, it's important that you have discipline around those boundaries so that you can innovate over the future without paying a tax on everything you do. And then, again, plan for new devices and technologies. They're going to come. That's part of the innovation that's going to be happening. So all this requires an initial investment, but you do hope for a rapid payback. John gave some pretty impressive statistics of some of the client work and the research that he was quoting, and we're going to talk about some of the payback and benefits that JBGS has seen later in this presentation. So leverage accelerators. This is critical. There's a lot of stuff out there. They're open source, they're third-party products, and they're proprietary platforms and technologies that can be used to accelerate this process and ease the initial investment. Right? If you're making an initial investment and you've got an expectation of payback in business benefit, if you can get if you can lower that initial investment and still achieve success, then that's a positive thing. Along those lines, Collaborative has our M3 architecture and framework as an example of an accelerator. So M3 stands for many devices, many services, and many sources. And you can see that essentially the idea is that the business value in the core of the system is really that optimized, that core that you're going to optimize. You're going to expect that the sources of data and integration are going to come far and wide. You're going to have internal databases, you're going to have external databases, you're going to have departmental systems, you're going to have cloud services, you're going to have outside the enterprise services. All of those have to be brought together to increase that opportunity for business value. And then you have to deliver that value through a number of different channels. And those channels represent devices, represent other systems, B2B, B2E, B2C, depending on what your focus is. But the idea of the M3 architecture is it's essentially it's a proven starting point that can be adapted to a specific situation. We also have a framework, that's why we call it in a box, where we actually take a technology platform to start with that's a running application, and you immediately begin working on your business functionality. So that provides faster startup, shorter duration for the overall initiative, improved efficiency, and take advantage of pre-built components. On average, across clients that are using this platform, we're seeing about a 20% reduction in effort, and we're seeing that we're able to shorten the duration of a typical 12-week to 24-week project by about 3 to 4 weeks. So that's a pretty impressive shortening. So I want to move on to our success story for JBJS. So we actually partnered with JBJS to develop 2 different platforms. I'll quickly summarize. First was an e-commerce product that actually replaced their existing platform. So this is an example where we stood up a new system, a new digital innovation platform to replace some legacy, and then migrated the functionality and other aspects over to the new platform. For the peer review evaluation, this is a net new platform that essentially addresses a pretty important need in the scholarly publication industry. The results of these initiatives, as I mentioned, 2 new digital platforms, 6 new products launched on these platforms, 7 different channels of interaction, and 14 months from start to finish. So all of this was accomplished inside of a 14-month window. So here with me I have Candy Shea, who is with the Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery, and she's going to introduce herself, and then we can talk about some of the process we went through to get there.
Thank you, Zach. Hi, my name is Candy Shea. I am the Portfolio Manager for Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery. I also had the privilege of working with Collaborative at my prior organization as well. So I've worked with them for about 7 or 8 years.
Excellent. So what was it like working with Collaborative?
So I think one of the main really positives with Collaborative is they offered us a full service team. So everybody from engineers to QA to project managers to architects, it was really like a one-stop shop. We had everything we needed. They really took the time in the beginning to understand our business. So they knew who, not only did they have all the people we needed, they had the right people. And they decided, they helped us decide from a strategic perspective that a build was much better than a buy for us. So that was a key point. And not only were they there to lead the whole implementation, but they still support both systems today.
Excellent. So did Collaborative help you create a seamless digital experience for your business?
Absolutely. So I believe you mentioned in your prior slides it was the twofold. It was the e-commerce system and the peer review evaluation system. The e-commerce was a really big one for us because not only did it do the e-commerce store, but it did the operational data store, which links into where a consolidated master data store where all of our data is on our customers, which is really critical for the business. And it also allows us to do bundling and promotions and, and everything. It really empowers the business leads to do everything all by themselves, so that, whenever they want to do a new product, they load it up. Collaborators right there if they need assistance. But for the most part, everything is really in our hands now, which is very helpful.
Excellent. And what are some of the business advantages that these digital platforms have provided?
Well, as I said, key for us is really empowerment and speed. So now, if our marketing team has new initiatives that they want to do, they can really just do things on the fly. They know the platform itself is very easy to use, so any new products, any new pricing, any new things that they want to try, they just load it up, and it works, magically. As far as they're concerned, it's really kind of funny. And it's so critical for us in this day and age, as even, in the prior presentations, speed to market is so critical. So the systems are flexible and easy to work with, and the support teams are always right there for us. So it's been a wonderful experience.
Excellent. Great. So just to recap, thank you, Candy.
Yeah.
And then to recap, so a digital innovation platform must support the fusion of business and technology. At the end of the day, the technology is really trying to enable the business to be more innovative and get to market faster, which is essentially the second point. And in order to be successful in this, you have to base it on a proven architecture. There's always going to be innovation, but you should focus on what I call conscious innovation. Make your decisions about where to innovate based on what is truly new, and leverage what works other places. And then finally, in order to manage the investment required to create a digital innovation platform, leverage accelerators, whether they be third-party or commercial accelerators like Collaborative's M3. Thank you.
Guys, we have had a couple of questions come in through the Q&A feature that I wanted to take a minute to answer. The first one is for John. How are you seeing companies building these new generations of platforms? Are they being built in the business or IT departments?
Yeah, the answer to that question, actually, Melanie, is somewhat multifaceted. I mean, we see companies, in some cases, acquiring software companies to jumpstart the creation of these platforms. In other cases, like Candy's, they're hiring third parties like Collaborative Consulting to do the work. In other cases, they're leveraging some of the off-the-shelf either software or open source solutions and doing the integration themselves. And in many cases, like both GE and Washington Post, they're creating separate software engineering groups because they realize the nature of these new digital platforms is in many ways different from the traditional systems that IT has built in the past and requires a different skill set. And my guess is over time, many companies will apply probably 2 or more of those different options to effectively build these platforms in the different business units.
Great, thank you. The next question is a more generalized question for Zach at Collaborative. What other business problems have you seen the accelerators used to solve?
Sure. So one of our other clients is an online retailer that was interested in creating essentially a net new business. And they came to us to help them really figure out the overall strategy for how they even got into the business, leveraging, of course, some of their existing assets, but truly spinning as something net new. And what we helped them do was to create a handful of different applications really a platform with a number of different applications and products built in to help spin this business up and create it from scratch. We did this in a fairly aggressive time frame, about 9 months, and they were able to get this to the point of going to market on schedule and really for the much faster than they thought they were going to be able to do it initially.
Great, thank you.